I'm Charlotte with the Southern Region Education Board, and we have with us today Joselyn Brandon and Vanessa Kald of Student Ready Strategies. Just a few notes before we begin our webinar. Today's webinar, of course, will be recorded. I am Charlotte Daly, the Program Specialist for Open Educational Resources here at the Southern Region Education Board. You may visit our website at sreb.org/topic-open-educational-resources. We are funded by the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation in collaboration with the other regional compacts to form the National Consortium of Open Educational Resources. Our shared contracts from the Midwestern Higher Education Compact, there's a 15% discount offered to the Midwestern Higher Education Compact, or MAC. Is offered for CC licensing for professional learning communities. This discount is available to MEC member states and its sister compacts. For more information, you may visit their website at mhec.org/Creative Commons, or you may contact their communications specialist, Mary Robinson. We will handle our Q&A today, as you will type your questions into the Q&A window, and they will be answered in the order in which they were received. We will do our best to answer each question completely and as thoroughly as possible. One note, SREB does not commercially promote any resources or services you may see on our summer webinar series. We are, however, giving you the best possible alternatives that are available to you to start your implementation and adoption of OER. Today's webinar, featuring Joselyn Brandon and Vanessa Kald of Student Ready Strategies, will focus on financial and community incentives for increasing OER adoption. Again, welcome to the SREB 2023 OER Summer Webinar Series. This is session 1. Ladies.
All right. Thank you, Charlotte. Hi, everybody. We have a small audience today, but we're excited to share today. So I would love if you have access to the chat, you can drop in just name, your title, what organization you work for, just so we have an understanding of who we have today. So we can maybe tailor some of what we talk about to your roles. I know that we're told from SREB that, we could have anybody from K-12 to higher ed to state leaders to anyone else. So we're just curious about who is there, who's with us. So feel free to use the chat to introduce yourself, and we are going to get started.
Thank you. And thank you again to SREB and Charlotte for this opportunity to present to you all today. As she mentioned, our session is on financial and community incentives for increasing OER adoption. And before we dive into introducing ourselves and Student Ready Strategies, I just want to take a minute to review what we'll be discussing today. So we'll start off with the Student Ready Strategies mission and our work. Vanessa will dive into OER as structural reform, and then I'll discuss developing incentives, those financial and non-financial incentives, and then we'll conclude with lessons learned and some new ideas, and then leave space for questions. So again, I'm Dr. Joselyn Brandon. I serve as the Director of Equity Projects for Student Ready Strategies. In my position, I get to work very closely with clients and our partners, and so that may involve data analysis, research, writing reports and memos. But as it relates to this specific work, I get to assist with the management and organization of the OER grant program that you'll learn about later today, and those non-financial incentives. I have experience with national survey, design, data analysis, and administration, as well as a background in some student-facing units within the divisions of student affairs. In a past life, I also worked in broadcast journalism. I'm originally from Indianapolis, Indiana, but I currently reside in Austin, Texas. And so I'll let Vanessa introduce herself.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Vanessa Kald. I serve as the Chief Strategy Officer at Student Ready Strategies. I started my career in student affairs. I worked at Penn State, Marshall University, doing student affairs work, and really got interested in policy and practice that accelerate student outcomes. And I went on from there to work at the state level, doing evaluation of college access programs and thinking about state level policy. And now we really work with institutions around strategic implementation and helping institutions implement new things that they're trying. And so I grew up in a little bit south of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I spent a large chunk of my career and my young adult life in West Virginia, did all my education in that state. And now I live in Indianapolis, Indiana, and where Student Ready Strategies is headquartered. So we want to talk to you a little bit about our core beliefs at Student Ready Strategies. It really grounds our work in the OER space. And so our first core belief is that every student can succeed within the right structures and with the right supports. And so a lot of folks, when they see our name, Student Ready Strategies, they think, well, they must help students get ready for college. They must help with college access. But we really see this as a dual-sided thing, right? When students are college ready, quote unquote college ready, students are saying they have the right skills, they have the right things to adapt into the system of higher education that we've built. With student-ready colleges and universities is what we're attempting to help build. It's when we have developed our structures and supports and redesigned our systems to ensure that they are ready for students. Because, you know, a student to us indicates that they are college ready when they apply and are accepted to our institutions. So that's core belief number one. And our second core belief is around institutional equity. We really think that student outcomes, the disparities in student outcomes will persist as long as we have inequities among the higher education institutions that serve them. So I'm not sure if any of you work at higher education institutions or you are at the state level or you're in K-12 even, but we know that everyone is funded differently. They have different opportunities. And we work at SRS because we know that we can help institutions who don't always get really, you know, expensive consulting and things like that. We want to make sure that we are here with all of the institutions that need capacity building, that need help to implement all sorts of things. So that is our second core belief, which led into our mission, which is to partner, plan, and problem solve with colleges and universities. As you all evolve to ensure the success of diverse students and with complex lives. And we do that institution by institution toward a student-ready world. So we do, our unit of change, we really do believe is the institution at Student Ready Strategies. We don't work directly with students and, you know, working with state systems, with other student success partners. We also work with colleges and universities, which you're going to hear about some of our state work today. But we are, our real core of our work is working directly with institutions. And so all of those core beliefs and our mission, we ensure that we translate those into action. And so we center all of our work, first of all, in data and student voice. So we look at disaggregated data. We work with our institutions to really examine it and to interrogate student outcome data, particularly around the intersection of student identities, whether that be age and gender, socioeconomic status and race. We think a lot about what those things mean in terms of the outcomes that we're seeing. We also embed intentional methods to solicit student voice, to share their experiences and embed key learnings from those students into our recommendations. And we also know that all institutions are very different. All states are very different. And so you all need customized support. And so we ensure that when we do our work, we prioritize the achievement of your students in your situation and use that data to guide those customized recommendations and any type of program design or institutional assets that we create for you. And we also engage in networks that believe in the same things that we just talked about. So we're so thankful to SREB for having us here today. You are one of those networks. And we also continually innovate around technical assistance and capacity building. And so we are a big, our organization is really focused on continuous improvement, ensuring that we are learning from all of the things that we do each day.
And so at Student Ready Strategies, we're often thinking about systems and structures and taking a step back to evaluate the whole picture. So this quote by W. Edwards Deming is one that really resonates with us. Every system is perfectly designed to get the results that it does. So for example, a homeowner lets their dog out and the result is the dog runs away. Well, oftentimes we blame the dog, but the dog is not to blame for that result. What needs to be examined is the structure and system of the yard. Is there a gate? Is there a fence? Instead of blaming the dog, again, evaluating that system, that structure, because it operated and gave a result the way it was designed to do. Another example could be designing night and weekend programs to accommodate adult learners and their schedules. But as a result, you notice that those students are not using some of the other support services. But all of those other student support service offices operate on traditional business hours, limiting students' access to those resources. So again, looking at the design of that system, it didn't match. It's getting the result of students not using that support services because the system wasn't designed that way. And so oftentimes when we're talking about systems getting the results that they were designed to do in the work that we often engage in, it's results that are less than desirable. And so we often emphasize that core belief that instead of pushing students to be college ready, where they need to adapt to the institution systems, we believe that institutions need to be redesigned to serve every student equitably. And so thinking about this quote and that concept in the context of what we're talking about today, the system of course materials, if you all could use the chat feature to respond to this question, what is the traditional approach to books and other course materials perfectly designed to do? What results are we seeing as it relates to the way the current system and structure is designed?
Are you all, I hope you're able to use the chat. If you're not, go ahead and put it in the question and answer box.
So yeah, seeing no immediate action in the chat, right? Like some of those results are profit. Textbooks are extremely expensive. Because of the process in which students either rent or purchase their textbooks, there may be a delay. So they're not starting off the semester or starting off the semester immediately with access to their course materials, right? So the current system and structure that traditional course materials are designed, we are getting those results of high cost to students. Sometimes they don't have access to their materials immediately. The results are the way the system is designed.
Oh, the chat is now available, so you can use that. That's okay, Charlotte. We will work with it. And Roberta said that, we did design this approach to provide content and to be a resource, which I think are accurate results as well. We are providing content and providing resources to students.
Thank you, Roberta.
And feel free to go ahead and introduce yourself again in the chat, or to add anything about what you think our system is designed to do. We appreciate it. Okay, and so we're going to jump into our program design and this idea of financial and community incentives around open educational resources. So at Student Ready Strategies in 2020, can you believe it? It feels so far away. In 2020, we were asked by the West Virginia Higher Education Policy Commission to design a program that would help proliferate the use of open educational resources around the state. And we knew that there was some money there. We knew there was some legislative policy, but we had sort of freedom to think about this in a bunch of different ways. So thinking about the world of different opportunities that we could take advantage of in thinking about open educational resources, we actually developed a list of considerations. So Jocelyn's going to advance the slide and I am going to walk us through those. So we really wanted to develop a program for West Virginia that was built for sustainability and for scale. And so we ask ourselves a series of questions here. First of all, and these are, let me go back and say, these are questions you also can ask yourself if you're thinking about developing an OER incentive program. And now these don't have to be, these questions can be focused at the state level. They can be focused at the institution level. So you can think about this in multiple ways, and we can have an open discussion at the end if you're thinking about doing this for yourself. So first of all, of course, we need to consider what policies does an incentive program need to comply with. Now, those could be legislative at the state level, the federal level. They also could be policies within an institution themselves. What sorts of funding can be used to support an OER incentive program, and how much funding is available? Most importantly, which stakeholder groups are we trying to incentivize? And what are their motivations and challenges to adoption of whatever you're trying to incentivize them to do? And then finally, we had to think about compliance and continuous improvement. So what does whatever administrative body over this program need to verify compliance with the incentive program? And then how do we incorporate student feedback and faculty feedback, to be honest, about how we make this program better over time? Oh, I think, yeah, here we go. Okay, so the first thing, again, we considered was policy. West Virginia does have a few policies that support the use of open educational resources. The first in 2020, when we started this program, there was a House bill that was really focused on just encouraging the adoption of open educational resources in higher education courses. And so there was some funding attached to that, which was great. And so that was the first thing that sort of got the commission thinking about this. And then as we were working on this program, I think this might have been 2 years ago, they had another bill that required disclosure to students regarding the availability, cost, and refund policies of course materials. So that includes open educational resources, and there was a lot about bookstores in that bill as well. So we had those policies that we were working with. We also were thinking about funding. So for us, we had 3 sources of funding for this. There was sort of legislative funds that came along with those bills. There were state agency funds that were available. And also they had philanthropic funds, which was really the caveat to, it was really spurred the idea around an incentive program because of these philanthropic funds. And I want to give a thank you to the Ascendium Education Group, and also to Philanthropy West Virginia, who supported this program. So they use local funding, local philanthropic groups, as well as national philanthropic groups. And we were able to match some of the local funding with the local institutions in those areas, but then use the national philanthropic funds and then the state agency and legislative funds to fund the rest of the state. And so those were things we had to think about. We also, in terms of funding and state level policy, we also had to think about what are the policies around distributing funds, and what did we need to consider there. This is the most important slide, in my opinion, is the stakeholder motivations and challenges. This is something else we really needed to think about, and feel free to use the chat if you are a faculty member or, work at a registrar. Oh, we have a librarian. That's exciting. So faculty and librarians were our main audience here. We were thinking that this group definitely needs to be incentivized, right? They're the ones that's going to be implementing OER or housing OER. And so their motivations when we talk to faculty and librarians were really about helping students, lowering the cost of college, right? Affordability, affordability, affordability. That's what we heard over and over and over again. We also heard a lot about students not having their materials on the first day of class. So we wanted to make sure we were doing something that would increase that use of course materials on the first day of class, helping them get their books and or whatever else they needed to be successful. A lot of faculty and librarians are excited about exploring innovative practices. This is something, open educational resources has been around for a while, but I still do not believe that it is scaled and commonplace based on our conversations and our work in different states across the country. And so this is still innovative. It is still something you can sort of push to its limits and figure out how you fit in that as a faculty member or a librarian. And so, of course, the last thing is adding new and updated and different type of materials into their courses. We've seen people doing all sorts of things in the OER space, but particularly students are resonating with videos and podcasts and some of the other open materials that can be implemented and remixed that are not just typical textbook type things. And of course, what we found and heard from faculty and librarians were the challenges. Oh, Roberta, you're a faculty member, and you are faculty. Where are you a faculty member at? I see you. Oh, Western Kentucky, awesome. I thought it said West Virginia. I was like, where? So welcome, Roberta, too. So a big challenge for folks was, finding, funding, and attending professional development on OER. So how do we make sure that the people that are being incentivized to adopt or create OER understand exactly how to do it? And Joselyn's going to talk a lot about our professional development, our community supports that we developed in this program. A lot of people didn't have time. How do I find time to create or adopt OER? It's hard to find. It's hard to make sure it's high quality. So when we were thinking about that, the incentive is, well, we need to compensate them for that time, right? The time that they're spending to find and adopt that OER, but then also changing their course structure to include it. So then finally, we thought a lot about the timing of new course catalogs and making sure that these courses are identified in these course catalogs or other appropriate places. And faculty and librarians have to think about, how are we going to do that? How are we going to make sure that we get these submitted on time so they are in our course descriptions? Another audience that I think folks often don't think about is the registrar. And we have found that identification of OER courses is one of the biggest issues to figure out, right? Is this something that we can do statewide? Is it something that you're only going to do at your institution? Are you going to identify that with icons? How are you going to do that? And that is something that the registrar has to be involved in the process of. And so while we weren't able to develop incentives for the registrars in this program, alongside of the program development, we were also surveying and meeting with registrars in order to advance a way to do sort of a statewide identification of OER courses. That is still something under construction, so stay tuned on that. But we did hear from students that that is something that they really wanted. And then finally, students, of course, these are our #1 constituents. They want all the things that the faculty also have motivations for, right? They want to lower or eliminate the cost of their course materials and have them on the first day of class. And then think about new and relevant examples in their course materials, more updated things, things that are innovative and fresh, and also provide a purpose and connect to maybe their career path or their program of study in a more relevant way. And so what we found with students is sometimes they're just not sure what OER is. Is it something that is going to benefit them? Will they like it? They also had challenges with identifying what courses are using OER. And then I think there is a little bit of unfamiliarity with some of the modalities that OER is presented in. So when we think about that, we think about a lot of times our adult students who may be uncomfortable with using their iPad as a book. Or students who would rather have a textbook that they can actually write in instead of having paper that is printed. And so just getting more comfortable with the different things that can be used for course materials instead of just a textbook. And then finally, we needed to think about, what is this program? How do we build in compliance and incorporate student feedback? We needed to ensure that the faculty were teaching these courses. We also wanted to understand what materials they selected and were using. Did they develop their own or did they adopt them? And I will give a slight preview. Most folks in this grant program were adopting, they were not creating. They were sort of finding things, sometimes remixing them, but a lot of it is finding course materials that are already out there. We wanted to get those course materials and be able to put them into some sort of repository. We also needed to discover how much money was saved and identify how many students were impacted by this program. And so we needed to design something that would collect that information back as a part of this program. And then, of course, we wanted all the student feedback, right? We wanted to know if they liked it, what modalities were working best for them so that we can actually match that with the different characteristics of the students. Did they think that OER was high quality that was being used in their courses? What were their past experiences with course materials they had to buy? And most importantly, would they do it again? Do they want more courses using open educational resources? So we took all of this stuff into consideration, and Joselyn is going to tell you about what we came up with.
Thank you. So yes, after all of those considerations, we developed a faculty grant program. And so the purpose of the grant is to provide, again, those financial and non-financial incentives to faculty. So the financial component is that $1,000 grant that they receive after proof of implementation. And then the non-financial is a certificate of commendation for inclusion in their tenure and promotion portfolio, and the professional development opportunities around OER. And the one thing we really want to highlight is that the non-financial incentives are completely free to the faculty and the grantees. So the community of practice that is hosted, the annual convening, those are completely free of charge for faculty. The other component with the grant program is that it is for faculty who are seeking to create or adopt OER in a new course for the first time. So if a faculty member implemented OER in a course in the past, they can't apply for the grant for something that they already did. Again, it has to be for a new course. And then the grant is dispersed after course implementation and after the survey has been completed. And there's a faculty end of semester survey as well as the student survey. And so like most grant programs, there is an application. It takes faculty anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes to complete the application, and it focuses on 3 key areas. So scale, cost savings, and broader impact. Again, going back to a lot of those considerations that Vanessa was talking about, especially compliance. Scale is looking at how many students are going to be affected by the use of OER, how many sections of the course will be utilizing OER, and how soon will OER implementation take place. So faculty are asked on that application, what is your typical course enrollment? Is there more than one section of the course that you'll be implementing OER? Assuming that if there is more than one section of the course, they're implementing OER in all of the sections, which is impacting even more students if there was just one course, one section of the course. The cost savings, we ask faculty to report what is the traditional cost of the materials for their courses prior to the OER implementation. And then looking at broader impact, is the faculty member going to engage in the professional development? Are they going to participate in the monthly community of practice and be a champion for OER with their colleagues across their institution and across their state? So that's the 3 key areas of the grant application that we asked. And one thing I wanted to note too is that with how soon will OER be implemented as it relates to scale, right? Creating and adopting materials can be a lengthy process. And that's another reason why we really want to highlight that non-financial incentive of professional development. So we're going to launch another grant cycle this fall. A faculty member may apply, they may be awarded as a grantee, and they may take the rest of that fall and spring 2024 semester for their professional development as it relates to OER, and then actually not implement it into, let's say, a summer 2024 course. So we're looking at how soon will OER be implemented, but also wanting to understand that it's going to take faculty time to understand and learn and work with OER if it's a concept they're not familiar with. So the 2 non-financial community incentives, again, community of practice and the annual convening. I want to remind y'all again that this is completely free for our faculty. So that's something that they can really highlight with their institution in terms of giving them the time and space to participate in our community practice in our annual convening. But because they've received that financial incentive, there's no cost to participation. So the community of practice meets monthly. I organize and facilitate that space for the faculty. Once a faculty is accepted as a grantee, there's a space on that form for them to suggest topics for the community of practices. And that's why sometimes these sessions may be led by faculty members themselves, or we might bring in external experts to facilitate our community of practice. And sometimes faculty just want time to do the work. So oftentimes we may have what is traditionally known as a writing session, well, we call it our OER working session, where faculty will bring in their materials. I'll open breakout rooms and they will work on the materials, ask their colleagues questions and get feedback. So our faculty really love that community of practice space, especially because it gives them the opportunity to network and engage with their colleagues across the state and not just at their institution. The other non-financial incentive that Student Ready Strategies provides is that annual convening. So our annual convening takes place every spring, typically in April, and it spans across 2 to 2.5 days. We always kick off the convening with a OER one-on-one session for first-time grantees. So that's where they're learning about different databases where they can learn about and get OER, or they're learning about remixing, something Vanessa mentioned earlier. So that's really for those who are like, I have no idea where to even begin. We kick off our convening with the OER one-on-one session. We also bring in keynote speakers. So Charlotte served as our keynote speaker for this past convening in April, and then allow an opportunity for breakout sessions. So we have faculty who have participated in the grant program. They can serve as presenters. We submit a call for proposals. Faculty will submit various presentations, and they get to present to their colleagues on the work that they've been doing, which also adds to their vitae, right? Like, I presented my research at this, and that adds to their portfolio. And then we conclude the convening with an award ceremony. So we always want to highlight and acknowledge the work that faculty and students are doing. So we have 3 awards that are for faculty in institutional leadership, as well as 1 award that is catered for a student champion of OER. So those are our 2 community incentives, non-financial, again, that Student Ready Strategies we present to this faculty under this incentive program. So with all the work that we're doing, we've seen a lot of successes with our grant program. So Vanessa mentioned previously that there are 21 public institutions in the state of West Virginia. All the public institutions have had grantees, so 100% of public institution participation. Over the course of the 3 years, we've had 214 courses transition to OER implementation, impacting 5,739 students enrolled in those courses. So we're seeing great success and impact from this grant program with the faculty. We mentioned that as a component of the grant program, faculty have to do an end of the semester survey. And so we're happy to report that based on that survey data, 92% of the faculty that have participated in the program said that they plan to transition other courses to OER. So this is a really notable success that we're excited about, because it really highlights that once a faculty member transitions a course through the program, they're not going to then go back and transition to traditional materials. They're going to continue with that OER that they've adopted for that course. And then they're so excited about it and love the response from their students, they then go on and transition other courses to OER implementation as well. So it's really a long-term investment and impact that we're seeing for students. So because of that participation, with 214 courses being transitioned, 100% participation from public institutions, we've seen a compound savings of $3,015,440 for students in their course materials, which gives a return of investment on $14 for students for every dollar that is spent on the grant. So again, right, this isn't your traditional scholarship program where a traditional scholarship or grant you're given $1, a student is getting $1. This is exploding the return of investment that we see from typical grant programs because of the long-term impact. Again, once a faculty member implements OER on their course, they're doing it in other courses and saving students funding on their course materials in the long run. Vanessa, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think that that's right. I mean, you think about these exactly that 92% who said they're going to continue to implement, right? And so this is probably actually a low number because we're not capturing the other courses that these faculty are transitioning. And also those in the state who are doing it based on seeing their colleagues do it, but have not applied for a grant, which we know that that actually is happening too. And so we're trying to estimate as best as we can, but we really do believe that this is a low number. And so we wanted to go over just some lessons that we've learned throughout the last almost 4 years of implementing this program that we designed. And, you know, we did learn a lot. We learned that the faculty who are receiving the grant absolutely love receiving the grant. So it was a good incentive for them to take the time and spend the energy to find the OER, adopt the OER, and then transition their course, you know, their syllabus, making sure that those OER were fitting into their course plan. And so we had to actually limit the number of grants faculty members could receive. So as Joselyn mentioned, we're actually on our 6th round of providing these grants. And so I think it was last year, we said we've made it really complicated when people were applying many, many times. And so we've limited the number of grants a faculty member can receive to 4. And knowing that those are going to continue to, those faculty are going to continue to do this in their other courses. We also, from the beginning, have ensured that faculty don't apply for the same course twice. So a faculty member that is, you know, implementing and may want to continuously improve their course may apply again for the same course, but that is not what this is meant to do. This is actually meant, you know, you have a course and you want to do the first round of transitioning it to OER. So we wanted to ensure faculty didn't apply twice. And then we really needed to underscore the idea that faculty needed that professional development to learn how to do this. And so Joselyn talked about the ways in which we are approaching that. We're doing the OER 101 workshop at the beginning of the annual convening. And we're also going to, a new idea that we're going to start this year is start to implement that as well with our fall round of grants. We're going to do one in the northern part of the state and one in the southern part of the state, to ensure that folks are up to speed on, you know, how do I get started doing this? What do I need to know? We also had some new ideas that we're going to start implementing. So as Joselyn mentioned, we do a faculty survey and we also do a student survey. And in the student survey, because we need to know which faculty actually completed their requirements, they identify who their faculty member is. And so we are going to be able to provide faculty with de-identified student responses, sort of at the aggregate level, to ensure they can continuously improve the OER that they're offering. And so once we told faculty that we were considering doing that and sort of creating a dashboard for each of them, our student responses on the survey exploded. So we're excited about that. We are thinking really deeply about creating another grant program that's focused on the writing of OER textbooks in subjects that are lacking high quality options. So we've heard from a lot of faculty that there are certain subjects that it is extraordinarily difficult to find good material out there. And so we think that it is a good idea to start incentivizing our faculty to create something that is high quality and can be used by a lot of people. And then we are going to be creating student focus groups. So while we know that we're getting the student survey data, we want to talk to folks and really get on the ground with them at their institutions and deeply understand what they like about OER and help scaffold our data that we're getting from the student surveys. And then we are working to develop a repository for the grant. Marshall University is a partner in this. So everything that we get in through our survey with the faculty, it's sort of collecting all of their OER, whether that be links to the OER that they're using or the actual documents that they've created. And they're helping to create a repository for the West Virginia, Open Education West Virginia, and putting that on their website. There are a lot of fancy ways to do repositories, and we're also looking into those. But at this point, this is sort of a homegrown grassroots repository that is focused on what has been produced from this grant program. And then we're also thinking about, this is probably a little bit further down the road, but really, how do we develop an incentive program for institutions who are creating entire degree programs that use open educational resources? And so students enter that knowing that they're never going to buy a traditional textbook or other type of course material, whether that be a code or whatever they need for an online textbook. And so that is something else that we've heard students express a desire for, and also faculty excited about. We have a master's degree program right now that's considering this. And so we want to make sure that we're able to support the adoption of that at a wider level. And so that is the program. We have a little bit of time. Joss, why don't you skip to the next slide? And we're going to share just some of what we heard on the surveys. You know, Joss mentioned earlier that 92% say they're going to transition other courses to OER, but faculty also said that they were high quality and that switching to OER was a worthwhile effort. Students, 47% spent more than $250 on average on course materials. And of those, 71% have delayed purchasing a textbook in the past. 98% of students say that the OER course materials were easy to access, so that's a huge number. And 80% prefer to take courses with those low-cost online textbooks in the future. That is a number that I would love to explore and wonder what that other 20% is thinking. So that's why we're thinking about these student focus groups, because these numbers say one thing, but we really want to get a deep understanding of what they mean. And there's just some quotes here that you can look at while we answer some questions.
Yes, because I was thinking, so the 98% of students that say course materials were easy to access, there was a question submitted that asks, how do students normally access OER material? Do faculty simply provide a link in the learning management system? Do students have to create an account to access OER materials? So most often what I'm seeing in our community of practice is that our faculty grantees are providing the access to the student. So there's not a separate account that the student would have to create. If that were the case, then that would need to be free or very low cost to fall in line to be considered OER. But oftentimes they are providing a link in their LMS software or providing the students with a printed material directly. I don't know, Vanessa, if you had something to add to that.
No, I think that was a great answer. There's so many different ways you can get students using OER. There are, I think, some systems where, you know, you can create a login and such like that, but it definitely would have to be free or extraordinarily low cost for the students, as you already said. And then we also had another question. Do we know how many schools that offer OER also use course marking? We do not know the answer to that, but that is a great question and something else that we can explore to sort of cross-reference our registrar information with what that course marking looks like in terms of what faculty members are in this grant program. And that's also something that I think the state can examine from a much larger level instead of being, we're very focused on this program and what's happening with these around 200 faculty that we have really deeply embedded here. But there are thousands of faculty that are working in the state, and there might be even more going on that we don't know about. So I think that's also a state level question. So that's a really good question though. Do we have other questions? Charlotte, you're allowed to ask questions too. Josh, you want to go back a slide so they can pull that up too? While you're thinking about questions, we just want to say that we do hope you found this idea of incentivizing faculty and librarians and others, registrars, students, to think deeply about OER and how it can be used. Was helpful to you, or it's got you thinking. We would love to partner with some of you in doing this work and helping you think through your unique situations and your unique students, and how we can help move OER forward in your institutions or your states. We also do a lot of other things as well. And if studentreadystrategies.com is our website, so you can always go there and learn more about what we do. A lot of our work is focused on transforming institutional policies. So, some of what we talked about today is, how do we make it sustainable and put it into policy? For instance, how do we make a policy around OER degree programs? And so those are some of the other things that we can do to help your institution to add capacity to some of this innovative work. And that QR code will actually take you to our sign up so you can get our newsletter. And we do some fun things with our newsletter. You'll see what we're watching and what we're reading and what we're listening to. And also just some updates about some of our great partners and the work we're doing with them. And Charlotte shared. Awesome. Charlotte, do you want to talk about the next webinars?
Excuse me. Yes, thank you, Vanessa. That's what I was trying to enter into the chat. I'm having some network issues. We've had a system upgrade, and I guess it happened during my traveling last week, and I am not familiar with it. So please excuse my fumbling with this, but I've entered into the chat a JPEG of our next webinars in this series. So one of the last question asked about course marking. So we will have our final session in the webinar series will be on some current research that is ongoing right now by our sister compacts, MEC and Wichi and Nebi. They are doing some research, and that research results will be presented in the August 23rd webinar. It's on course marking at U.S. colleges and universities. So please go ahead and feel free to register for that seminar, or there are three other webinars in this series. I'm fumbling again, please excuse me. But anyway, I want to say thank you to Vanessa and to Joselyn. Are there any further questions or any final questions for them? We do have a few minutes here. Any final parting words, ladies?
Just thank you to you and SREB for inviting us to talk about our incentive program as it relates to OER. And thank you for all of the attendees for joining us today.
All right, thank you again, and we'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.